Hello and welcome to another pen video from me, Penultimate Dave. So I have here another favourite inks comparison, and this is my purple favourite inks comparison number 2 video. So I think with that, let's go and swab up some of these inks. So I get a lot of questions on how I do these ink videos. So I decided I would add this to the front of each of the ink videos. I put links in the description, but I know some of you watch this on TVs or mobile devices, so you don't get to see this. So first off, the paper is the number one question I get asked. What paper do I use for these ink comparison videos? So this is the original Tomoe River. This is 52 GSM. And it is the white, not the cream, the white. Where possible, I try to go for the white because the cream can actually change the colour of the ink just a little bit. So this is Tomoe River 52 GSM in the white. A lot of people get confused as well because I have what looks to be a grid on this page, and it's actually an Oxford Optik pad. These are the pads that I actually use when I'm writing my writing samples for pen reviews or in my currently ink. So they have these little squares up here. I just use that because it's a good guide for me. When I put this very thin sheet of Tomoe River over, I can actually see squares, so it helps me write a little bit sort of straight on the page. Not always, but sometimes it does. The other thing that I also have is I have a bottle of water, plain water, and I dip my nib in here. So for consistency, I use the same fountain pen, or I guess it's not a fountain pen, it's using a fountain pen nib though. This is a 3D printed pen from William Shakour in the UK. So he prints this material 3D, and it has a number 8 size Bock nib which I can unscrew, and you can see there. So it is just a dip pen holder for a number 8 size Bock nib, and the idea is I want to have consistency with the writing sample. So I use this, I dip it in the ink, I write, and then I will dip it in here and I will rinse the nib off several times and I will dry it, and then at that point I will then go on to do the next ink swatch and the next writing sample. So there you have it. That's how I do my ink swatches. So I just wanted to show you that here. Now on to the ink comparison video. So the first ink here is a Sailor ink, and it is a Shikiori ink, and it is Fiju-Sugata. So we'll do an ink swatch here, and you'll see here that this is quite a light purple here, or it's a little bit more, I would say, on the violet side, but I'm going to include it in this video, and you can see that there. It does get quite light towards the bottom. We'll do a second pass over the top half just to show the difference between a wet or a broad or a dry or a narrow writing nib. And this is Sailor, and it is Fiju-Sugata. Which for me is quite a nice coloured ink. It's a little bit on the lighter side though of violet or purple, but to me it is a good honourable mention here. The next ink here is Diamine Violet, which again sort of falls into the violet purple sort of area of inks. I don't have enough violet inks to really do a violet video in terms of favourite ink, so I'm just going to list these in my purple video here. So we'll do an ink swatch. Now this, I definitely would say, is certainly more of a purplish colour. It's not a dark purple, but it's maybe a mid-range purple that you'll see there. We'll do a second pass over the top half just to show difference between a wet or a broad or a narrow or a dry writing nib. and hopefully you'll see that difference here on camera once this has dried a little bit more, but you can certainly see it there now already. So this is Diamine Violet. But for me, that is a very nice purple ink. And it does also, I want to show you the rim of the bottle here. You may see that, there you go, look at that on camera. There is some gold sheen going on there. So this is one that can sheen a little bit, although typically I haven't seen it sheen much so far. The next ink is Diamine, and this is Amazing Amethyst. So we'll do an ink swatch. And this, I always think of being a purple ink, and it really, to me, is more of a really like greyish violet ink. But it's still one that I do like quite a bit. I do find it quite dry though. So we'll do a second pass over the top half. Just so you can see the difference between a wet or a broad or a dry or a narrow writing nib. And it still loosely falls into favourites of purple here. So this is Diamine Amazing Amethyst. Actually, it's Amethyst. It's a Hyst. But you can see that as it's drying, certainly the drier side of that ink is certainly starting to look a little bit more purplish. So again, another honourable mention there. The next ink here is Diamine Tyrian Purple, and this is a one that I picked this up actually at the, it was a free bottle at one point at the London Pen Show at the old venue. So this must have been about 5 years ago. And they were giving out free bottles of Diamine 30ml ink. So we'll do an ink swatch here. And you can see that this is a very different purple. But it also gets quite dry towards the bottom there. So we'll do a second pass over the top half, and hopefully you'll see the difference between a wet or a broad or dry or a narrow writing nib. So this is a Diamine, and it's Tyrian Purple. But that is an interesting purple. I wouldn't normally class that as a purple, but I kind of think as it goes on wet, it does look a little bit more of like a scarlety red. I don't know if you would agree with that, but it will dry a little bit more purplish though once that ink dries. The next ink here, which has been a favourite of mine more recently, is Leonardo Officina Italiana Purple. And I got this purple with a pen, and it was actually a Leonardo Officina Italiana Grande. And I just want to show you the rim, the threads there on that bottle. They are gold in colour. So this is also a sheening ink as well. You typically can find it with some purples. So we'll do an ink swatch here. Now I do find that this is quite a viscousy ink. So it's quite thick. But it is also quite wet and well, I'd say more lubricated. We'll do a second pass over the top half, and hopefully you'll see the difference there between a wet and a broad or a dry or a narrow writing nib. So this is, I'm just going to abbreviate this to Leonardo Purple, because it's going to be a bit too much of a long name to read out the full, or write out the full name there. And then the last ink here is Diamine Purple Rain, and this is a German Inks exclusive. So if you want this, you will have to buy it from a German retailer. I think Diamine are pretty rigid on ink in terms of where you can buy it. So if a retailer in Germany wants to sell an ink, or if it's a country specific, or if it's a retailer, then you will struggle to get it outside of either that country or that retailer. So we'll do an ink swatch. And this, again, is quite a thick viscousy ink. And you'll see it there that it is quite, there's a lot of dye in this. And it's getting a little bit dry towards the bottom there. We'll do a second pass over the top half. And hopefully you'll see the difference between a wet and a broad, or a dry or a narrow writing nib. And maybe you'll get to see some sheen here as well, because this is also an ink that will sheen quite a bit. And I want to show you the bottle again. The rim of that bottle, the threads, it is a little bit of gold sheen around that. So hopefully you'll get to see some of that here. So this is a Diamine Purple Rain. But that is quite a nice sheening ink. So I think let's take a look at these inks now that they have dried. So the first ink here is Sailor, and this is a Shikiori ink, and it's called Fiju-Sugata. And it's really, I'd say almost like a forget-me-not sort of mauve or purple. It's a nice colour. And it's a little bit more of a faded purple, I would say. So, can you see the difference between a wet or broad or dry or narrow writing nib? Yes, you definitely can. There's a lot of difference there. Can you see any shading? There is definitely some shading in that pulled area. Can you see any sheen? No, not really. It's a purple, but it's a light purple, so you're not really going to be seeing much sheen there at all. The next ink here is Diamine Violet, which again is a little bit more of a, I want to say a mid-range purple for me. It's a nice purple. The writing sample comes out a little bit darker, a little bit more towards the wetter side of that ink. And I'll show you up close there. Can you see the difference between a wet or broad or a dry or a narrow writing nib? Yes, you can. Quite a bit of difference there. Is there any shading? There's a little bit of shading, but not a huge amount. Is there any sheen? And yes, I want to say it's trying to sheen. It's certainly the area around here is a little bit more sheeny-fied. I see a little bit more of like a silvery sheen there, but I'm not seeing it on the writing sample though. The next ink is going to be debatable. Is this a purple ink? It is an Amethyst. It's Diamine Amazing Amethyst. It's a little bit more of a greyish purple or purplish grey. It's an interesting colour. It's not what I would think of when choosing a purple. And I think when I bought it that I thought it would be a more sort of brighter purple. But it's still an interesting one at that. Can you see the difference between a wet or broad or dry or a narrow writing nib? Yes, you definitely can see the difference. Is there shading? There is some shading in that pulled area. Is there any sheen? No. And even though it's called Amethyst, there is no shimmer in that ink either. So you're not going to see shimmer in. You're not going to see shimmer in any of these inks. The next ink here is Diamine Tyrian Purple, and I'm not so sure that I would call this a purple, to be honest, but it's still an ink that I do like. I personally think of it more somewhere between a scarlet and a purple, a little bit around that midpoint. The writing sample is quite dark. I guess it can still be, it's got purple in the name, but it could still be considered as a purple. So it's in here almost as an honourable mention. I'll bring it up close, can you see the difference between a wet or a broad or a dry or a narrow writing nib? You definitely can. Can you see shading? There is shading going on here. So you can see a little bit of shading. And again, there really isn't any sheen going on there, but it's not an ink that I would expect to sheen really. The next ink here is Leonardo Purple, and this is an ink that I got, as I mentioned, with a pen, a Leonardo Officina Italiana Momento Zero Grande at the time, the sand version. And I was a little bit disappointed that it didn't have a greyish coloured ink in it. But to be honest, once I opened that bottle and I tried it, I really liked the ink, and I do like purple inks. So can you see the difference between a wet or a dry or a broad or a narrow writing nib? You can see a little bit of a difference there. Is there shading going on in the pulled area? Well, there's a little bit of shading here, but you can't really tell because it has some wicked sheen to it that you can see there. I'm not seeing a huge amount of sheen on the writing sample, but you can certainly see it there in that ink swatch. And then the last ink here is Diamine Purple Rain, and again this is a high sheening ink. Can you see the difference between a wet and a broad, or a dry and a narrow writing nib? Not really, actually. It's pretty much consistent. Can you see any shading going on? Again, really not a lot of shading, purely because of the wicked amount of gold sheen there that you can see. Just look at that sheen. And you can even see it on the writing sample there as well. It's not shimmer, it is sheen. It is a thick ink, as I mentioned, as I was putting the ink onto the page. So it is a very, very nice sheening gold purple ink. So there you have it. This is my favourite purple inks comparison number 2 video. If there are any of these inks that you like, do let me know in the comments below. Likewise, if there are any other purple inks that you think I would like, do let me know in the comments below. So that's my favourite purple inks comparison number 2 video. Thanks for watching. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next pen video. Bye bye.